Our banking system is what we consider fractional reserve banking, and they actually create money when they do business. So they do that through what we call excess reserves. So let's say you deposit $10,000 in your checking account at your bank. So they now have your $10,000 as reserves. Okay, so their balance sheet is going to look like the screen here. It says assets, they have reserves of $10,000, but they also have liabilities of $10,000 because they owe you that $10,000. If you come and say, hey, I want my $10,000, then they have to give it to you. So that is a liability for the bank. So now let's say the required reserve rate, which is set by the Fed, let's say they say that the bank has to hold $10,000 or 10% of your funds. So the way that a bank makes a profit is they lend out whatever excess reserves that they have. So we're going to say that the bank is required to hold 10% of your $10,000, which is $1,000, but then they can lend out the remaining $9,000. And that is how a bank is going to earn a profit, is by lending out the reserves that you deposit. Now, note that the liabilities don't change. They still owe you that money. So even though they only kept 1,000, they lent out 9,000, they still owe you that 10,000. Okay, so let's practice this for a few minutes here. So let's again say that we have a required reserve rate of 10%. That means the banks have to hold 10% of your deposits. So let's say Jacob deposits $1,000 in his bank account. So that's a deposit of $1,000. Now the bank is required to hold 10%, so they have to hold $100. So they can lend out $900. Okay, so let's say Jacob's bank lends out that $900. Okay, so they're going to lend it out to Fred. Okay, so Fred's going to borrow $900. Okay, now the Fred's bank has to hold 10%, so they're going to hold $90. So now they can lend out $810. Okay, so now Fred's bank can now lend that $810 to Jamal. Okay, and you can see how this goes. So they lend it out to Jamal, and so they have to hold 10% of that. And then so that's $81 they have to hold. They can lend out the remaining 729. Then we can do that again. We can hold the 81, lend out the 729. Then that bank's going to lend out all but 10% of that money. So as you can see, this is how a bank actually creates money in our system, okay? Because they keep lending that money over and over and over, okay? So when you're doing assignments, make sure that you're just including the deposits for this column. So that is how a bank makes money.